This is Queer Youth Work Voices, Practices, Change, a podcast for youth workers supporting queer young people across Europe.
Welcome to Queer Youth Work, a podcast that explores inclusion, representation, and the realities of queer young people in youth work and educational settings. Today, we're going to be focusing on a very crucial topic, which is mental health and well-being among queer young people. And to guide us through this conversation, we have Daniele, which is a trainer and a psychologist, part of a group which is called Digitabilis, which deals with digital well-being. So I would like just to give the floor to him to briefly introduce himself and before we just move into the experience. So hello, Daniele.
Hello, Luca.
Hello, nice to see you. So welcome to this podcast. I'm very glad that we're going to be having this conversation today. Um, yeah, as I was saying, maybe that would be beneficial for all the people who are listening to the podcast for you to just introduce yourself, just to tell a little bit more about who you are, and then we just go straight to the point of the episode.
So, as you said, I am a psychologist, I am a trainer, and I also did my part in developing the training for A.B.A.G. And also, I work with young people in well-being promotion, working with digital technologies, and also minority young people. And working in bag has been a very intense experience, not also because it was a week, a full week long training, but also because it was a sort of direct experience with the young youth worker, their needs, their problems, and also their difficulties. So I hope this kind of podcast will be something closer to the experience of youth worker and the young people too.
Yeah, I hope so as well. Okay, thank you for your introduction. Well, so I think that if you agree, we can just go straight to the point. And I have a question for you, which is an opening question for this podcast, which is, why do you think that mental health is a key issue for queer young people today?
So while developing back training, were asking ourselves, what do we really mean with queer young people? And we decided to go with a more, with a wider concept of queerness as non-conforming young people in terms of sexual orientation, in terms of gender identity, but also in terms of bodies. There are bodies that are queer in terms of being, for example, disabled bodies, fat bodies, unconventional bodies, for example. Being a queer young people, young person, often means struggling with marginalization. You are often taken as not the norm, but an exception in society. It means dealing with minority stress, living in a society that is often not built and not designed with your needs, with your identity in mind, and often means struggling with the representation. Sometimes we say, yeah, now in TV, in media, you can see a lot of representation of queer young people, of disabled young people, but often those representation are very limited, and sometimes they contrast with what young people live and see in their everyday life. So all those elements make mental health clearly a key issue for young people, but also link young people mental health with the experience they live in their everyday life. So young people mental health, queer young people mental health is not only something that pertains clinical workers, but also youth worker in a sort of their social and local environment. So I hope that with this podcast we can answer some practical questions about what can a youth worker actually do for queer young people mental well-being.
Yeah, yeah. I totally see your point, and also thank you for providing us with this background context about yeah, queer young people and also youth work. And I agree with you when you say that also youth workers have to be equipped with some skills to deal with the mental health of these queer young people they are working with. It's not just something that is going to be dealt with in a clinical context also. So only, sorry. So yeah, I think that this podcast is going to be shedding some light on this aspect, and that's why I'm really, really looking forward to this conversation with you today. So, can you describe a real situation in your experience, for example, where a queer young person was struggling with their mental well-being?
So, as much as my professional background allows, because we have to protect the privacy of
Hmm.
young people, I think I can bring here with you and with the voice listening a very typical situation of a young person in early secondary school setting in their early teens that was revealed by their classmates as same-sex attracted. And in that situation, we had some signal that made us think that some support was needed because we saw how their peers felt that the subject that their classmate could be a same-sex attracted person. It was felt as something taboo, something that was spoken only in the hallways, behind the people back, but never openly, and something that made their peers worry to stories, to fantasies, to various activities, emerge some kind of worry of what if this person, for example, do not feel really accepted in the group. What if this person may harm themselves? And also some very negative perspective. But it was also mocked. That person was also made fun of. We often say that queer is a reappropriated slur, a bad word that became some kind of badge of identity. But where you're young, being queer can still feel bizarre, strange, and you can also feel out of place. Also, not only for that young person and their classmate, their peers, but also the adults in their lives felt that something was not okay with that person, not only because maybe that person felt out of place, but also because there was some kind of narrative around the person, like you are too young, at that age they are not aware of what they like. So, support was needed, but I want to really, really take the point that the support was needed not only for the young person, but also for the social system, what was around that person. And that's exactly where a youth worker can do their part.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I totally see the point. And also, I just wanted to thank you for bringing this real example because most of the time we are just relying too much on abstract concepts.
Yeah.
And having the chance with you to go through a real life situation, I think is also easier to connect with this
Yeah.
situation. So I really want to thank you for bringing this example. And I agree with you when you say that it's not just a matter of working and educating the queer young person in your example,
Yes.
but also the people surrounding him.
Yes.
And Yeah, and I think that you are hitting a very good point when you say that in these very specific situations, youth workers can really have the chance to have an impact on this situation, because it's not just a matter of, telling a queer young person or maybe educating a queer young person about something. It's just to create also a context in which that person
Mm,
can really
mm,
see themselves, live for who they are. So I think that it's really
mm,
important to raise awareness also on the fact that the surroundings, let's say, the adults who are surrounding these people are people who have to be the target of our education attempts as well.
mm, mm. Yes, we also started talking about marginalization, minority stress representation, but we are talking about contextual factors. So
Mhm.
that's not only stuff regarding the individual.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Okay, great. And as you really brought us a very, very specific example,
Mm.
I would like also to ask you um, what really helped in that situation create a safe space for that young person.
So I think that's something that young youth worker listening can take home from this kind of situation is that we did actually work on the classroom behavior, but not only framing what kind of discourse of behavior was surrounding that person, but also the mechanism behind such behavior. For example, the moral disengagement. That is what happens when I do something that maybe I feel is also wrong, but I do some kind of mental strategies to distance myself from the moral implication of what I'm doing. I think that every youth worker sooner or later will meet some kind of situation when some young person or maybe an adult do something that is problematic, that is maybe also not very aligned with their moral values, but also say later, well, everybody does it. Or, for example, they say something like, the person asked for it, they were provoking me, and so on. So I distance myself from the moral implication of my action. And also what we call pluralistic ignorance. So situation where I do something, or I see other people doing something, I feel it's wrong, that it doesn't sit right for me, but I think I am the only one thinking like that. Yeah, that kind of behavior makes me uncomfortable, but I'm sure I'm the only one that feel like that. Because if other people found it uncomfortable, they probably speak up. But what happens is that you are not the only person feeling that uncomfortable, but everybody stay silent and think they are the only one. So breaking this kind of assumption help people see that they are not also not alone, but the shared norms of the group can be challenged. We also found important reframing the assumption of the adults, in this specific case the teachers, but that could be other adults in the community. So, for example, yes, that person is too young. They are not really aware of what they like. Yes, they are too young, but at the same time, you are celebrating, you are making fun of, you are looking fondly at the first signs, manifestation of attraction among their heterosexual peers. So there is a big gap without you treat same-sex attracted young people and heterosexual young people. So what are your assumption as an adult in this kind of situation? Maybe that some kind of attractions are normal, are normative, are right, and other kinds of attraction are something like the exception of the norm, maybe even wrong. So beginning from making the adult's assumption explicit, evident. And also in this kind of situation, we didn't out the young person to their parents. And I think it's very important for youth worker because sometimes the idea is let's talk with their parents, their family about that. For example, the family may be homophobic, family may try some kind of conversion therapy or problematic intervention. So not necessarily we need to tell everything to everyone. And I think those are 3 points that a youth worker can take home and actually apply to make spaces safe for young people, for queer young people.
Okay, great. Okay, so you mentioned a lot of stuff here. So you
Yes.
starting with the moral disengagement, pluralistic ignorance, then the reframing of the assumption, and then this last thing that you were mentioning. You know what? What really caught my attention was what you were sharing about the pluralistic ignorance, because I think it's something that everybody is really facing, okay, at
Mhm.
some point. My question for you would be, also because I really want this podcast to be like a practical toolkit for youth workers.
Yes.
So how can we really make sure that what I think can emerge in a context, like in a school context?
So, regarding if I understood the question is
Mhm.
how can make the fact that I am not the only one thinking about something explicit in context. Okay.
Exactly. So yeah, it is like, okay, because maybe I have my own thoughts about the situation and I do really think that what is happening is wrong. Okay.
Yes.
But how can I really, address this in
Yeah.
a, plural context so that this pluralistic ignorance can be prevented?
Yes, I think that also outside the school context, like for example, think about some kind of youth space where youth worker may work. A good strategy may be using narrative methods, so some kind of storytelling activities when the story can explore how character may feel and think in some kind of situation, and maybe they can feel and think in different ways, but also some kind of anonymous activity when where a person, every person participating can put their position in some kind of for example graphical representation. I agree, I disagree, I am comfortable with that. I am not comfortable with that. I share this kind of experience. I don't share this kind of experience. This
Mhm.
can be made for with a marker or placing an object in a line. And so I don't know directly who share this kind of experience, but I
Mhm.
know that I am not the only one. Or, for
Yeah.
example, I know that there are some persons that are closer to me than I think.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And also, while you were sharing this, I was thinking that it can also be addressed through digital tools that sometimes they are just, making the anonymous status more preserved, let's say. But I like this concept. I like the fact that, yeah, through a very simple activity, you can really easily address it and also make young people realize that they are not alone in their own
Mm.
thinking, which is really important, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's also a what I think is a very interesting layer in this kind of activity is that I don't really know who is close to me. Maybe some person I feel I share a lot with, but
Mhm.
also think something has a very different position on something compared to mine, or on the opposite, a person I feel I don't share anything with is actually very close to me
Mhm.
in something, and I won't ever know who is, but that makes me think and make me question some of my assumptions. So.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It can be very revealing, I would say.
Mm.
It can reveal a lot, such an activity, I think. Yeah, for young people. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. And also, yeah, it can also break down some ideas like, okay, maybe a person I don't share anything, I have nothing in common with, can have my own opinion, the same opinion as mine on a specific topic, on a specific
Mhm.
happening, you know. So yeah, yeah. Thank you, Daniela. I think
Mhm.
that was really on point. Yeah, that's why I think it's good to, yeah, to question ourselves about the language that we are using. So
Yes.
maybe a question for you would be like, how did the language and also the listening, of young people and everyday behavior that we have towards them make a difference or can make a difference?
I think that we could go on and go on regarding the kind of language we use, and I have 2 points. The first is respecting young people preferences, for example, pronouns or uh, even respecting the fact that they may say, I think that I like a person of the same gender, for example, and means valuing their position, valuing their perspective, and it also challenges the kind of heteronormative assumption in which when a young person is attracted by in a classical heterosexual model. We validate it. We think it's a wonderful natural thing. When the young person talk about themselves and their attraction in some kind of more queer direction, we kind of devalue their language and say they can know yet. Please don't tell. You are just confused. So. Valuing their language is the first step to valuing their position, their perspective. Uh, Even when they are a bit uncertain, even when they are a bit questioning themselves. And also, regarding language, it's very important to be mindful about how we talk about discomfort with both the individual and their peers and the adults in their life. Because if we frame discomfort as something that is related just to something that the individual lack of kind of pathology of illness, we forget about the context, the relationship behind the young person, and how such relationship can contribute to their well-being or contribute to their discomfort. And also about how discomfort may be a sign of growth, of questioning on developing their identity, and growth can be more uncomfortable for a queer young person. Being outside of what are the normative narratives, the normative words, and stories we use to frame growth and also to explain discomfort. So, uh, not talking just about what the single individual lacks, but also about how the context, how the people and the environments around them participate, take part, and contribute to their well-being or to their discomfort. I think is a very important step that begins with our language.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that we are covering very important points in this, yeah, in this context, let's say. You know, I would like now to hear from you about, mistakes that should be avoided by youth workers in similar situations. That's
Mm,
because we
mm,
have gone through a lot of things also on a practical level on how to address this mental health issues, let's
mm,
say, with
mm,
queer young people. But what kind of, mistakes should be prevented from
mm,
happening
mm, mm.
by youth workers?
I think we can focus on the mistakes we tend to do with the good intentions, good ideas,
Hmm.
something we do with the best intention at heart. Beginning with the sometime involuntary forced outing. So coming out in public to there is not a linear process, is not even something that is done, is not done. It can be gradual, and forcing it on the young person is maybe well-meaning, but actually really dangerous practice. Also, we should be wary of our tendencies to assume that queer people are naturally unhappy. For
Mm.
example, yeah, life must be really hard for you. Yeah, you are discriminated. Yeah, you must feel really bad. But can we focus also on their resources, on what they find pleasurable, exciting, interesting about their experiences? When we work specifically on this kind of themes, we should avoid that kind of pity focused intervention when we usually go around about yeah, queer people are discriminated, their life is really hard, we should be all kind to everyone and be mindful of each other. That not build change, and also can also be harmful. Is more useful to develop universal skills. For example, thinking about the fact that people may live life and experience things in a different way than us. Also, for example, working on themes like consent, for example, in relationships, and also developing shared values that can be useful, and awareness of their values for young people in a lot of contexts that may or may not involve queer peers. Also, um, very important thing is not focusing only on provocation where overt, very loud, very evident, but also focus on how the everyday inequalities and discrimination can be not so evident and maybe not so intentional. For example, sometime working with young people, they say something like, I am not homophobic, I don't want to beat queer people, but you can be homophobic in a much more subtle way. And discrimination, inequalities are not just in the fact that, for example, if we use that kind of wider model of queerness, my wheelchair using friend cannot access a building because there's no ramp and just stairs. but also some kind of inequality may also be the fact that there is no representation of some kind of disabilities in the media, or for example some kind of discrimination, maybe the fact that in a school or in a social setting, we only think about heterosexual couples as normative, and we celebrate heterosexual young couples, and the others kind of attraction are kind of swept under the rug, some kind of an anomaly that we don't really know what to do. So focusing of such kind of inequalities and discrimination is much more important that working only with the big prevarication of the very evident discrimination.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say something because I think that the last thing that you were sharing with us today is really on point, like focusing on everyday inequality and discriminations. And I think that most of the time people are not even aware of the
Mhm.
fact that they are discriminating people by doing something that they maybe think it's harmless, you know. So that's why I think it's important to share this message, like, okay, let's focus on something which is practical on a daily basis, and equality, inequality or discrimination, more than, you know, the big pictures. And I really see the point of what you're saying. Yeah. um you know, because now I think that we are definitely broadening the horizons of the listeners, okay? But and also the listener are most of the time probably youth workers. But uh, how can a youth worker, for example, recognize when a situation requires further professional mental health support? Because, you know, we said that also youth work can have an impact on this topic that we're talking about. But I do think that there are some situations that have to be addressed somewhere else. So my question for you is, how can we really recognize and realize when a situation needs something else?
So, is a very delicate topic, a very important prelude to recognizing the need for professional mental health support. Also implies recognizing if, as a youth worker, I am aware of what kind of mental health resources are there in my community, in my environment. There may be many, there may be few, there may be some resources that are not tailored for queer young people, and we have to be aware of that. Generally, I say that when we see some kind of discomfort that interfere with daily life in a very heavy way, for example, the young person is often not leaving the house, not leaving the room, not eating, where there is self harm, for example, or especially for queer young people where dysphoria is particularly evident and acute. But also in the last situation, is very important that we identify some kind of queer-friendly mental health support, because that maybe not be available. So it's very important that we tailor our recommendation and suggestion, and we know beforehand where we send in young person. But generally, I say self harm, very high interference with the daily life. For example, eating, going out of the room of the house, and also acute dysphoria. So I highly feel that my assigned gender identity is not what I feel I should be. is not what I feel current with my experience of the world.
Hmm.
Also,
Okay.
we have to think that parental consent often required for mental health intervention, and sometimes we may not be able to obtain parental consent, and sometimes even talking of such subject with parents may be putting the young person at risk. So we have to consider that.
Hmm. Yes, and in this regard, I just want to ask you, so how can we really explain referrals, for example, to a queer young person without making that person feel problematic?
I think that some kind of approach must start with them being queer is not some kind of problem we need to correct. So I am not proposing you to see a mental health professional to correct your queerness. I am proposing you to see a mental health professional to better live your identity that includes your queerness in a way that is less painful and more respectful of your identity, your potential, and your unique traits. And also, we may be describing what may happen when they make their professional and some kind of service. For example, if we have some kind of um, queer organization that or can bridge and make some kind of help desk or counseling spot for a young person, we can say, yeah, you go over there and you'll find people who are mindful of your identity, of your situation, and maybe better equipped to help you with what are you feeling and what are you living right now, not equipped to correct what are you feeling or change you in some kind of way. I think that is a very important first step.
Yes, and I think that in this conversation you are hitting very, very good point. I think that I have said this several times already, but this difference between correct something and let's say teach a person how to live who they are, not really teach, but you know what I mean, like making these people live who they really are is a very huge difference because most of the time we think that something has to be corrected.
Hmm.
Well,
We are not trying to change you. We are trying to help you find way you can be yourself in a safe and respectful way for
yeah.
yourself and for the person around you. That is a very different perspective. We are not fixing something wrong with you.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree that this is the kind of message that should be conveyed to a young person. Even though I still do think that there is this misconception about asking for help means like, okay, if I'm asking for help, it means that there is something wrong with me, which is, I think, still deeply rooted. But I like the fact that you are just sharing with us today that this is not the case. I mean, a person who is asking for help doesn't mean that they have to fix something about themselves. They are just learn how to better live who they are.
I also think we can go back to what we said about the kind of activities we can do with young people, the kind of teams we can explore with them. We can explore with them because if we already did some work on the fact that, for example, people can experience the world, their body, and their attraction in different ways, and that some ways are not well represented, some ways are not considered normative in society, and that may make some people who are, in fact, queer uh, feel that it's harder for them to navigate the world. If we can share this kind of frame of mindset with young people, we can present, we can talk about refers to a mental health professional in a more let's say in a less fixing way and more in let's help you navigate your difficulties in
Mhm.
this kind of world, and it changes the focus, and is a very so we already made we already have some kind of common ground.
Great. So thank you also for pointing this out. I think that was really that was really interesting. So yeah, thank you very much. We are going towards the conclusion of these episodes together. I think that we could stay here definitely for a longer period of time, but a podcast episode has a limited time frame. That's why I would like to go practical now. Um, what are one or two things that youth workers can really start doing immediately to better support the queer young people well-being?
So thinking also about my own experience, I think that is very important to be mindful and periodically refocus on our assumption about young people, their attraction, their gender identities, their bodies, and how that is influencing our activities. For example, if I think that young person can only be attracted in a certain way, my activities, my narratives may be framed in that kind of way. If I think that, for example, a person who has no visible disability as is able-bodied, I may be involuntarily uh, not recognize that some kind of activities may not be accessible or not be may not be sustainable for some kind of people. And as a youth worker, and very important part of our work is recognizing young people needs. So uh, go back to our assumptions and how our assumption frame our activities is a very important thing. Also, when something comes out, is emerging, sometimes we are too quick to put a label on it, and we have to keep open to what the meaning the young person give to their experience maybe. For example, a young person may be interested in some kind of activities that are often associated with another gender, but they maybe feel okay with the gender they have been assigned at birth and being socialized with, for example. So, some kind of building meaning together also foster agency in young people, and is a very important thing. B.A.G was the acronyms for body, agency, and gender. So if we keep building agency with them, also staying in their discomfort, our discomfort and their discomfort, we can put them in the center and also build abilities, build skills with them. And also
Mhm.
that means that also a youth worker can and sometimes I say must tolerate feeling unprepared or overwhelmed. Overwhelmed was actually a term that came up more multiple times during back training. But it can
Mhm.
also be a good thing. I am out of my comfort zone. I am stretching what I may be able to do or think.
Yeah, it's like embracing also the overwhelming feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And because you were mentioning people feeling overwhelmed or maybe unprepared, is there any kind of message you would like them to walk away with?
Mm-mm. I think we can start with the I don't know is still a valid answer, and a valid feeling. And there's still a lot of things that you can do with that don't knowing. You can sit with how that unknowing make you feel. You can co-regulate together with your other youth worker, but also with the young people you work with. You can look for information together and make sense of it together. I think that staying in the I don't know and building solution together and way to coagulate and tolerate that feeling of not knowing is actually very empowering because it is very easy to feel in control, in charge, competent when we are never challenged and we can really predict where we are going. But real
Mhm.
life is not like that. And
Yeah.
that's what we have to work and prepare young people with. And also thank young people when they question us, they make us feel unprepared.
Yeah, yeah. I see the point. I see the point because most of the time we just want to feel in control of situation, but rather I think that being able to tolerate to a certain degree, let's say, some discomfort and some I don't know time, I think it's also a way for us to be more able to teach this to young people. You know, if we are more prepared to feel overwhelmed and unprepared sometimes we can also teach or make young people learn that tolerating some discomfort and some
Mhm.
unknown is part of their life as well. And also, you know, at some point you were mentioning the word growth.
Yes.
So yeah, we can grow out of discomfort most of the time.
Yes, Baker was a very intense experience also for us trainers. And
Hmm.
also, the participants questioned our
Hmm.
trainers, not only the content, but also the methods. And I think that it was a very important part of being wonderfully unprepared together, but in a very generative, in a very flourishing way that they can build something.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I like this part of, yeah, also young people questioning what you are doing as a youth worker. So yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Daniele. And one last question for you, if we still have one more minute to talk, would be about why mental health work with uh, queer young people is also about systemic change and not just individual support.
Absolutely. We have often a very narrow idea of mental health and of mental health work, like some kind of therapy that fixes some individual misfunctioning, malfunctioning, mismanagement, when actually, especially for minorities, a very important part of their well-being is linked to our the kind of environment that we can build, material environments, digital environments, social environments. And youth work is a very powerful engine of change to develop new norms, new way of being together, and retake also our physical, our local environments, and remake them in ways that are more inclusive and also that can foster different ways of being, a different way of feeling our bodies, different way of living gender, different ways of being attracted. So actually, even when we feel unprepared, overwhelmed, or in the unknowing, I think that youth work has a great potential to foster mental health in queer young people.
Mm.
Exactly because we are living and participating with all the difficulties, the frustration in building such environment, material and social. So we are part, yes, part of the problem often, but also part of the solution that is never binary.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you also for this last, you know, punctualization. Okay, Daniele, I think that we have a lot of things that our youth workers who are going to be listening to this podcast have to think. I think that it is food for thought because this kind of content are not that much available on the market. So that's why I think a podcast like this is really enlightening in a way because it's shedding some light on a topic, but also is giving some practical tools that people can really use in their work. So I really want to thank you for this really, really insightful conversation that we had today. I don't know if you have anything less that you would like to share with us before closing this episode.
Mm. I thank you for these great opportunities, and I thank you for also for the great opportunities that was uh, linked to developing and actually being a trainer for the bike project. And I hope that a youth worker can be, not only be more mindful of their assumption, but also more confident in their ability to build something even when they feel overwhelmed or unprepared.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that this last part is really hitting a good point. So thank you very much, Daniele. And for all the listeners, I am just telling you thank you for listening to our podcast and see you to the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Queer Youth Work Voices, Practices, Change. Follow A Bag of Inclusion on Facebook and Instagram to stay updated on our projects and stories from youth workers across Europe.